So, Aquarius, Uranus, in the 11th house. Some of my favorite things to talk about. So, today we're talking about the sign of Aquarius, how Aquarius represents the unique and creative mental process that it takes to change, that it takes to come out of the fog and into an elevated state where you feel like, my life feels better. And where, Aquarius helps align one's life with what's better for us. And sometimes we don't always get to see what's better for us until we give it a little time. And that's kind of where Uranus comes in. Uranus is always described as this very tumultuous experience where these unexpected things are happening to you. Things that you wouldn't have assumed would be an outcome of, whatever you're putting your mind and your energy to. And you've got to quickly figure out how to solve it. But usually what comes out of this solving is an upgrade. You've now upgraded your mental systems and your nervous system in order to handle this unexpected thing that came out of nowhere. So oftentimes because it's Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury, we can experience things with our vehicles still. We can experience things when we're up in the air, in a plane, because Uranus represents plane, Aquarius. And then also Uranus represents our technology. And so, weird things can happen if there's a transit over your Uranus placement, like say with Mercury or the moon. And this planet also represents the hive or collective mind, the collective thought process, what we're all really centered around in terms of what we're viewing and how we're perceiving the world, and then developing a mentality out of that. So it's, we'll talk about it in a minute. Uranus represents this cycle of 7 to 8 years. And there's a lot of things that transpire within that. And if you think about your life in 7 year increments, I'm sure that you can think about in your mind how different your life can be from, year 7 to year 14. And, when it comes to what we're collectively or consciously thinking about as groups, whether we're in an astrology class or we're on social media, that Uranus is what is controlling kind of the algorithm of our attention. So Uranus is the algorithm of all of the social medias, what catches our attention, what keeps us captivated, what makes us itch after 7 years because we just can't take it anymore. We need something different. We need another lover, that kind of thing. And, just Uranus really brings and forces us to recalibrate ourselves and to come to a better standing of reaction, because it is the other sign, the polar opposite of Aquarius is Leo, and Leo is a very emotional sign. Aquarius is very much needing to make sure Uranus, the 11th house, this is kind of this energy of making sure that we're not being overly emotional about something, that we're very much being mental and logical about the way that we solve problems or the way that we cooperate with one another or come together. And the 11th house is the house of friendship. It's the house of groups and where we find resolution, and our marginalization. So if you are looking at your chart and you're looking at the 11th house, you might look at the planets or the sign there and maybe start to tell, oh, if I'm being marginalized, if I'm not fitting in, if I need to find a group, this sign or these planets will help me activate this 11th house and make it so that I am not marginalized, make it so that I can fit into a group. And so it's important to pay attention to the 11th house because we can find some resolution in there, we can find some friendships, but it's also like the collective desire of what we want. If if Leo and the sun is our purpose, then Aquarius, Uranus in the 11th house is making sure that that purpose turns into something greater, something that is actually given out to the world. Because to be honest, to be a creative person doesn't mean that you need to sell what you're making. No one actually even needs to consume the art that you make in order for you to be an artist or for you to be a creative person. So with the Uranian 11th house activation, it's saying, hey, we've got to now put this on paper because this is useless in your notebook. It absolutely needs to be given out because there are people out there that don't feel like they have a place to belong. They feel marginalized. They don't feel like their voice is being heard. They feel that they're too unique in order to find that common vein with everybody else. And so it's important for all of us to have, at one point in time, to release these babies into the world because there are people that have the same collective desires we do, the same wants and needs that we do. Um, and so it's the 11th house is the outward expression of creativity, really, first and foremost. In the chart, the fifth house, Leo, that always represents, a very creative individual, but it really means nothing if Uranus and Aquarius are not in the picture because that's the sign that's gonna the water bear all of that creativity to the rest of the world. And so that's why all three of these symbols and archetypes represent humanity, humanity as a whole. Um, Aquarius is supposed to be the first human sign of the zodiac. And what makes us human is being able to stand upright. And so that's why Aquarius represents the ankles, because that's kind of the only thing that makes us different from a lot of other animals, excuse me. So Aquarius is an air sign. It's fixed. And so we remember with the element of air that we're always dealing with the mental process and the fact that it is very quick. It's less emotional and less personal. So these people are usually able to take information and expand information and to take things in, to be told particular things, to be judged or to be criticized, and to kind of let it go through one ear and out the other. So air signs generally don't hold on to what people tell them in particular, these different criticisms. I'm not saying that they don't, or that they don't have insecurities when it comes to that. I'm just saying that the air element is easier with that process, because there's an influx of things moving constantly with air that you can't really get too wrapped up in the personal meanings of it. And so when you're introducing other people and taking in information, you need to be flexible. And with Aquarius being a fixed sign, it's a little more difficult for them to be flexible. They can be kind of fixed in their mental process because the way they feel, their mentality they feel is the best mentality. It's the best way, because they're a problem-solving sign. Their mode is, like we said, fixed, and so having an argument with an Aquarius would be extremely difficult, because at a certain point, this sign represents having acute awareness and foresight for the future. And a lot of times when they are bringing something up in a conversation, um, they feel that they are right because they can project and see it. And they want to make sure that they convince or assure other people of this as well. So that's why debates can get heavy, and I've heard a lot of things about Aquarians where they think they know everything. And maybe they do. Maybe they do in terms of um, you know, when we're having and sitting down to a conversation, maybe there's just things that they're bringing to the table that maybe our awareness wasn't fixated upon. And so fixed signs can be very all-consuming and obsessive about the things that they're really focused and driven on because um, as a fixed sign, they're wanting to make sure that everything is staying in perfect alignment so that, all of the necessary needs are met creatively, um, materially, monetarily. Fixed signs really want to make sure that things aren't disrupted so that this can continue to go in a nice aligned way. So the fixed signs kind of keep us in our place. They keep us and they hold us in one particular area of the world because we love it and when we're fixated on it. I'm fixated on the place that I live right now. It's a tourist place, so there's lots of food and plants and when everything is beautiful around you, when you have everything you need, you're well resourced, there's no reason to move. And so these fixed people are wanting to make sure that all of those things are aligned so they don't have to move unless they are really want to. No one really wants to be forced into a situation. So with the symbol of the water bearer, it's the one who brings the freshness to the collective, the one who nourishes by imparting knowledge and above all consciousness. Because what makes us different from animals is the fact that we have a consciousness. And that's why Aquarius and Uranus represents that, this human form, this ability to adapt and to evolve. And, most 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 of the world, no matter what the microorganism or animal evolves, right? But how much does the mental evolve? And that's what the water bearer is trying to bring. It's trying to bring a higher level of consciousness by imparting, particular things, unique ways of living, things that are different from what the village would normally take in as information. Um, and so, this is usually a unique individual, an individual that has gone out and explored the world and they come back and they spread whatever knowledge that they have received in their life experience. So fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. Um, Determination, focus, like we said, almost obsessive, the need to increase, and the need to always make it more is a fixed sign situation. These are very independent signs, but they all know intrinsically that connection is the only way. You've got to have people behind you, good family, being able to be alone, having this alone time that really allows you to deal with your inner reflections and your inner shadow with this Taurus Scorpio axis. And then, we're also dealing with money and finances and food in this axis. But in this axis here, with the Sun and Uranus, we're dealing with, our creative inspiration. And also, how do we elevate the groups and towns and cities that we're in? How do we make our lives better? Do we continue to buy clothes from the thrift store, or will we finally buy something that's very specific and unique for us? Um, and so with these axes, they're very important for us to feel that that about us doesn't change, that the way that we approach our lives creatively, financially, food-wise, that just continues to be in a flux of movement because no one wants to go hungry, right? No one wants to lose people or have to pay debts. Um, no one wants to lose their creative flow or be, banished away from a situation and have to live in isolation and away from people. And so these signs are making sure that we don't fall into that as often. Um, and so with these signs, with Aquarius, there is a need to commit. with all fixed signs, do I commit and stay with this and stay fixated and focused to make sure that I see it to the end? And Aquarius wants to make sure that their ideas and what they desire to see in a group is actually represented in that group. And will do what will do what it takes in order to fill that need or be a part of solving that problem. Aquarius is very good with group dynamics and knowing if they're healthy or not. So air is exchange of ideas. It's movement. It's logical, lyrical, mental. It invites other people into our world where, we shake hands and exchange, different thought forms. And, where we're taking the steps into the outer world and reflecting on ourselves a little less. So with the sign of Aquarius, we're almost to the end of the wheel. Pisces, really does think about everything and everything all at once. Whereas Aquarius is like, okay, I'm really focused on the human condition. I'm really focused on improving that condition for myself and for other people. And so, the personal connection to it is more than just a hope and a wish and a dream. It's something that I want to make manifest so that I can belong as well. So with the air, it's looking around and cataloging what we see. It's being questioning, it's being curious about what we see. It's looking at movies, it's going to different places and, people watching. It's window shopping. It's, you know, listening to podcasts and radio shows and streaming services with Aquarius. And Aquarius brings a lot of the social media aspect. Well, the algorithms really and the technology. Gemini is bringing the information. And, there is, you know, a modern approach with the air signs. It's being attracted to cities, being attracted to signs of elevated living, that things are really good here. I could survive here. I could make money and have people that could hear my voice and listen to the things that I have to say. So usually you'll see these people have kind of a more modernized style. Their homes can reflect that at times. And, it's important to have both kinds of people who are not geared towards that, people that are, because all experiences of life are fun according to the sign of Libra. They very much want to see that there are both experiences of life to see. So they make sure that that balance is there. Like we talked about earlier, air doesn't hold on to the past so tightly. Aquarius would probably do it the most out of the other two signs. I've known a lot of Aquarian people to have some pretty deep stories that are up here, but they tend to not talk about it or touch it unless it's important for a particular thing or another. They can be very private with that portion, as most fixed signs can be. But when you get down to it, you realize that like they actually have to do a lot in order to make sure that their mental process is aligned, so that they're not attacking themselves, they're not attacking their thoughts. And so Aquarius has that tendency, or has the ability to kind of bring this level of rumination over things that have happened, things that people have told us, or criticisms or judgments. And so that we have to do other things to support our mental process. So two really great Aquariuses that I know in my life, around the age of 50, are still needing to listen to positive affirmations, are still, needing to do meditation and to move their bodies a lot more than they would have expected, because things pile up on us over time, and We really need to do the work in order to make sure that our mentality about ourselves and what's going on in our lives reflects some positivity, because that gets on our nerves, gets on our nervous system, and can either make or break us. So Aquarius really does bring this sense of our mind is very important, and that we have to nurture it through having the right people around us through the groups, and having people that know us through friendships. And so you know with the sign of Aquarius, with any air sign in particular, um, we're using our legs and our hands, we're using our intellect, we're speedy, there's high mental acuity, um, in order to get us to bigger places, in order to um, make it so that we have that when we look back at pictures, when we look back at our lives, we go, oh, that was an upgrade. This is much better than what I had before. That's really what air wants to bring us, is something better than we had before. Sorry about that. Okay. So, um, you know, we talk about the zodiac signs being how we do something. We talk about planets being what we are doing. And then the houses are where in our lives are we doing that. So when we go through your charts, when we look at Uranus, we will be evaluating these things here. So Aquarius and air, the need to create an opportunity for marginalized people. We talked about that. Unique problem solvers who consider the cohesion of a group. It's coming into alignment. It's your mentality and the way that you think, your level of consciousness. We often refer to that here in evolutionary astrology. Depending on who you study under, will determine the levels of consciousness that they have defined. So in the original interpretation that we have from Jeffrey Wolf Green, there are 3 separate levels of consciousness based on how we move in our world and what we're motivated and geared towards, whether we're geared towards growth or spirituality. My teacher split those 3 up into 3 and then 3, and so now there's 9 different consciousness levels that we could look at. All that to say that consciousness really is our mentality. It's the way that we move in the world and what we think of it. And I do believe that Aquarius and Uranus represents that, represents our ability to change our consciousness, our ability to grow and to, expand ourselves in a way that is not only like creative, but creatively guided by those that they're around. So, when you have people around you, they're able to verify where you are in your life, where you are in your journey. And when they verify that growth, there's a different mentality that you can have about yourself. And maybe your level of consciousness will be just a little bit more refined, because you've overcome some things. So Aquarius is wanting to create equality amongst all in the human race, all about these group dynamics. It really does not consider the natural world or its resources. So, that is controlled by Pisces. And so what can happen under the sign of Aquarius are these kind of unintended consequences. Like, yes, I'm taking care of this situation. I've solved this problem by printing paper. but I'm pumping ink into the river. And, you know, what's better? Being civilized and having paper, having ink on paper. Yeah, that's a civilized thing, but it's very uncivilized to be polluting and or not considering um, things outside of our human condition. So that's a food for thought on that one. Um, so the sign can be sometimes judgmental, calculated, and critical or condemning because, like I said, because they have the forethought, because they're able to see the future or kind of stand above things, um, they are more critical. They're more able to look at a problem from the top down. And so, what they're trying to do is make things better by kind of pointing out what needs to change, what needs to be refined and upgraded in order for it to continue. Um, Aquarius will refute biological connections. I've known some who really don't identify as their cultural identification or where they came from. Um, they very much want to have an experience that is different from their own. They want to separate from the group, from the family, and have this very unique and elevated experience. Aquarius is the sign that goes off into the city, while the Leo stays at home and takes over dad's business. Those are the difference between the two. Um, Aquarius represents the brain, the cardiovascular system, and the nervous system. But on the other juxtapose on the Leo end, um, there is a need to create just for the sense of creating, knowing that you're alive. And um, you're generally creating for oneself instead of where the Aquarius is trying to create for the collective so that it makes things better for everybody. Um, Both of them are even in the fact that they take unconventional approaches to their life when it comes to happiness, when it comes to um, growth. Because they're both fixed signs, they definitely want to, make sure that they're able to consistently bring this energy. Um, Leo, they can be leaders and teachers, the ones who do it in a different way. However, you know, they kind of stand alone in their process. They'd prefer to stand on the stage by themselves and to teach and to explain what they have learned based on their own personal connections, whereas Aquarius would get on the stage with five people and they would all discuss, the research that they've done. So, it's taking everybody's personal experiences and making it relevant for the group instead of the Leo expression where it's like, I had this experience and so you can have it too, um, type of energy. Um, so Leo, uh, brings the need to find your own creative, sorry, yes, the need to find and create your own family. Um, so while Leo does want to, be a part of the pack, be a part of the group, at the end of the day, they, you know, need the opportunity to kind of create this life for themselves, to kind of create their own pride, and so they're doing what the Aquarius is doing, which is, doing their best to create a space for everybody to express themselves in a genuine way. Um, This is Leo as the sign of like bonding with the father, bonding with the family, then realizing, oh, I'm not like them. I want different things. I need to have a separate experience. And so they go out and do the Aquarius thing. So there's a lot of, Aquarius um, leaning into the Leo in order to express themselves more as an Aquarius and vice versa. So if a Leo is not able to stand out and to be a leader and to serve people in this way where it's like just me and my own, then they go out in an Aquarius way and go find a group that they can do this with. And vice versa. When Aquarius is feeling boxed in, when they feel like the leader has fallen from grace, when they no longer agree with the collective thought process, they do the Leo and they go out on their own and they figure out how they're going to assimilate into another group. So while both of them are very independent, um, they both understand that it takes others in order to fully be in themselves. Okay, so Uranus is having unexpected things come out of nowhere. It's the planet of upgrading or leveling one's life. Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury, and so with Mercury, we are dealing with communication and travel and um, the different transportation systems that we have. And Uranus is like, okay, well, how can we get there faster? How can we get there more efficiently? How can we get there without using any gas? Maybe just only using electric. And so this Uranus has the tendency to bring us to like a better, more refined way of communicating with other people, maybe through technology instead of, on a landline or, landline's technology, or as opposed to writing notes, passing notes in school. That's definitely Uranus. That's changed. I remember passing notes in school when I was a girl, and now the passing notes is text messages. So that's what Uranus has done for our Mercury. It's Uranus brings our conscious communication, where we are considering other people. It's very conscious to not only consider where we are and what we want for our lives, but to be hyper aware of those needs in other people. Uranus brings this radical approach to, no matter where it is in our chart, it can create a radical expression. And we'll go over that. We'll go over all of our Uranus placements here in a few. Uranus brings the need to belong to a particular group or set of ideals, depending on where it is in your chart. And what you will get when you come, what you will come together for. So if you are a person who is and prefers to be alone, what is that thing that will get you away from yourself and get you immersed in a group, or get you out of the house? So Uranus can do that. It's interdependence with Uranus, versus just plain independence with Leo. So interdependence is really a group of people, a group of Leos coming together and functioning together, and being able to intermix and commingle information with one another. Everybody is independent, but when it comes to the group dynamic, everybody joins forces and they become something larger. Being interdependent is, I do my part, but that's not all. There are other pieces of the puzzle. There are other parts that make this thing move. And so, when we're working together, we could be working in a room together, but we all have separate jobs. That's interdependence. Versus independence, and we are trying to do everything ourselves from begin to end. And we did talk about Uranus being the planet of making life better. Now, hold on one second, okay? Sorry about that. Okay, so when we look at the sun is the planet of our purpose, what makes us feel alive, what gets us out of the bed in the morning, what will we participate in and express that will make us feel and achieve joy. Um, this is the planet of focus and intention. Focus and intention on that particular purpose. And then Uranus will bring us the particular people, conversations, networks in order to make that happen. The sun is the planet of life and warmth and growth. Um, it's the ways that you dedicate your life, your life's work, what you can physically manifest in your life. So, the sun, and its purpose, how do we physically manifest our purpose is, did we achieve our dreams? Did we make the thing? Did people buy the thing? Did we feel happy about that? And do we want to progress? And the sun can also represent in your chart your father's responses to emotions, kind of how they are in the world, whether they're gregarious or not, just your emotional state, how you feel about your father. So if my sun is maybe in the sign of Cancer, then, my relationship with my father probably isn't as close as it is with my mother, because Cancer represents water, it represents the mother and the moon. And so this Cancer child would feel an affinity towards the mother as opposed to the father, even though the father could be still bright and nurturing. It's just kind of what our natural proclivities are, or, how we're naturally drawn, or whether we have actual closeness with our father or not. So in the fifth house, we are tapping into our creativity. We're using all of our artistic outlets. In the fifth house, depending on what sign is ruled there, it's how you feel about children. It's whether you have them or not, or how you want to give back to them. The fifth house is when you're is where to look when you're identifying childhood experiences that were maybe difficult, or you are kind of doing some inner child work. That is a good house to look at, depending on the planets and signs that are in that house, will help you remember what the essential nature of what brings you back to your inner child, what makes you feel safe, what makes you feel creative and fun and courageous. The fifth house is oftentimes where you can find yourself alone, where you are, you know, doing things in your own way and are still looking for and are still having to seek for those that kind of hear you too, that are able to meet you in that way. The fifth house is self-awareness through intuition, um, and where we nourish our heart. Now, the 11th house is, where we come together, where we join in humanity, where we bring together our creative efforts. It's where our herd mentality can take place. So we can find a leader that we really love. The ideologies match. My life is upgrading. Change is happening, and so you know me and everybody else in the group feels that way. And so we can get really staunch about our beliefs in the 11th house, and, staying aligned and not leaving that group, and kind of like dealing with um, what happens, like just the natural, unintended circumstances that happen when we are trying to be with like-minded people, and there are differences. There are things that make us personal and different amongst the group. So that's why I say it's a little herd mentality, because we're all like minds, believing in the same thing, until one day you don't. And that's a Uranus thing. Is one day you could be going along and then hear a piece of information and then start to put together the pieces and realize that this person you've been following is actually a predator. And so it's very Uranus to leave the group and to say, you know, I no longer fit this bill. When you have planets transiting the 11th house, you can have issues with friendships. And, you know, some of the outer planets that take longer to transition, sometimes that can be a hard one for some people. I've known people who have had experiences with Pluto um, being in their 11th house and, you know, having a long time of friendships coming together and separating and losing a lot of friendships. Um, so interesting. It is the 11th house is where we find technological connections, new networking opportunities. So if you're looking to work with other people, the sign and the planets there will help you um, to find new groups that make you feel like a human being, that make you feel like you belong there. So, as we talked about last week, a Uranus return occurs every 84 years. And so we, as people, will only expect to see one of them. Uranus spends 7 to 8 years in a cycle, in a sign. So right now, Uranus is in Taurus, um, and is getting ready to change into Gemini in June. And so we'll go from Uranus being in a Taurus sign, which is and has dealt with our commerce, our our materials, um, the speediness with which we get these materials. So I remember, you know, at some part of the Uranus cycle, we were experiencing not being able to get resources, you know, shelves being empty, not being able to get the foods that we need. Now we're experiencing extreme price hikes. Um, we're seeing longer wait times to get the things that we need, as opposed to when we were kind of in the middle of its cycle during the pandemic, we were, you know, getting everything delivered to the house and upgrading our backyards and redoing our offices because we had a new life, you know, we were forced to stay home and required to be away from other people. So there was no touch. There was no community orientation. It was just all about the material with Uranus and Taurus. So now that we're going to be moving into Gemini, we talked about Gemini being the information, being social media, being the news. We can expect to see an evolution in that. Um, you know, I don't know what that could possibly be. I mean, we have been experiencing a lot of different things, but, you know, if we are talking about the way that we get around in the world, the way we use transportation through Gemini, the way we speak to one another, the quickness with which we get information to one another, um, we can probably expect to see like something else come into the mainframe that will give us ease with that. I mean, I don't know what else we can expect from technology other than watching AI just blow out of proportion. And so, you know, with Uranus and Gemini, I would expect that we would need to be very careful about our sources of information. So when you're picking up a book, when you're picking up a resource, and you're wanting to elevate yourself with it, you need to educate yourself first on the person who wrote it. You have to know who they are. You have to know that they're a credible source, because what's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of what would be considered misinformation, people that think they know better, people that say they've done the research, but have they? You know, how do we know? And so it's going to be very important for us to really do the research. Uranus and Aquarius represent research and its ability to give us the answers that we need so that we can project for the future. Um, so, I wonder if people will come off of social media as kind of this unintended consequence. Um, who knows? We'll start to see in June. Woman Smith. She is the illustrator of the Rider-Waite tarot deck that everybody so lovingly uses, and you can see her images here in the back. Um, in 1909, she collaborated with Edward Waite, and they created this deck together. She was the illustrator. Um, she she was the first painter to exhibit at Renowned Gallery 291 in New York. She was the first woman. Um, she established her own publishing company, Green Sheath Press, and she focused on other writers, other female writers, and often people that were marginalized in the literary world. She has Uranus and Leo. So isn't that funny that she, probably was ostracized for, or couldn't quite figure out how to be a part of these literary groups or even how to be published by an actual publisher. So she ended up doing that for herself. She has a sun in Aquarius um, that is directly opposing Uranus in Leo. So she has these very creative ways of bringing things together. Um, she converted into Catholicism in 1911. She settled down and she operated a guest house for priests. And she continued to create art, but due to public tastes and public changes, she ended up dying in obscurity and poverty, which is a sad thing and happens to people. But that wasn't something I knew about her. Uh, so, like I said, she's got Sun in Aquarius, and let's see here. I don't have the time of birth, so we've got the Sun in the first house. So she, a little bit of background story. She's born in the United Kingdom. Her father was someone who worked in the government, and so he was stationed in Jamaica. And she went to Jamaica to obviously live with her dad while he was stationed there. And she had an apparently close relationship with some of the people, the older population in Jamaica, and they would tell her stories and folk tales. So, um, a lot of her creative inspiration was mentioned that, kind of being on this island, being told these stories, um, and, which were important to her because, she um, coming from the United Kingdom, didn't have that kind of culture running through her veins. So being exposed to this very unique way of living, living on an island, not being in the UK and having that kind of weather adaptation, it probably felt good to be somewhere culturally different. Um, and with this moon in Leo, she was able to probably express herself in a different way. And so she did other forms of art. This was one that was in the gallery. It's in the Georgia O'Keeffe collection, and Georgia O'Keeffe has her collection, uh, and I don't know exactly where her work is located, but I believe that this painting belongs in that same area. And this was her rendition of the Blue Cat. So if you've seen the tarot cards, you can see her style most definitely in that. Um, this was in the Whitney Museum of American Art, and this was her rendition of the Wave. Very beautiful, this one. She used a lot of watercolors and a lot of markers in terms of her medium. And then I found this really odd thing. I found this to be odd, and the reason why I think it's odd is because I wanted to understand what she was doing, but I was very confused because I couldn't understand what she was writing. So, like I said, she, went to Jamaica and she wanted everybody to experience these really great stories that she was told by the Jamaican community. And she felt that she kind of had this personal responsibility in order to make sure that people could hear these stories. But when I opened the book, her version is it's a little hard for me to read because it's not it's not Jamaican patois. So her version and the version that it's supposed to be is here at the bottom. This is traditional patois, which she didn't know how to speak. And so she had a lot of criticism for this work because um, it wasn't a proper display of storytelling. The way that she heard it phonetically is not the way that it's said. And so there's a disconnect that I noticed. Now, the artwork was quite amazing. Let's see here. Are you able to see this? Okay. So, really great artwork. This book is called The Anansi Stories, Anansi. And, she's got some really great illustrations. She's telling these age-old folk tales, but they're extremely hard to read. So right there, we can tell that, with Uranus in the sixth house for her in Leo, um, you know, this ostracized, being ostracized, maybe because she didn't say things the right way, or she didn't write them correctly, or, it wasn't what was considered perfect, is an actual thing she did experience. She experienced a little backlash from the way that this was written. Um, but in any case, she's a fabulous artist, and people loved her for that. There has been some myth around her cultural identity, her race, and it has been concluded that she um, identified as a white woman, even though there's been over the years I have seen this where everybody speculated she was black, and that's not the truth. But she was able to bring culture. She was the water bearer. She bared the water of what her experience was, and she shared these stories and probably captured these stories in a way that other people weren't able. And there's a couple unintended consequences, like the fact that it wasn't written perfectly, but does that make it any less valuable? No. Okay. So, Aquarius is intention of the community. It is our networking, our associates, the people that we can call at the drop of a hat and be like, "Oh, I've got this problem," or I need a brilliant idea, and that's what Aquarius brings. It's civilizations, it's being socially aware of what's happening in group dynamics and social cognition. When we're thinking about Uranus and its 78-year cycle, what are we cognitively thinking about? And, like we had talked about with it being in Taurus, we're thinking about our money and our resources and how fast we're getting those things. And, now it's going to be on information. Now it's going to be on, you know, the news that we're getting. And, you know, maybe there will be another upgrade in the way that we're transporting. Maybe they'll open a rail line somewhere between Las Vegas and LA. Who knows? Um, but Uranus is where we're all socially thinking and mentally like churning together. Uranus and Aquarius, I say because, Pluto is in Aquarius right now. And collectively, when we think about our pains and our struggles, we're all collectively really focused on the way that the groups have made us feel. And we'll be focused on that until Pluto moves out of um, Aquarius and into Pisces. So when we're thinking about evolutionary astrology and we're interchanging these signs, these planets, these houses, I know it can be a little confusing at times, but when we start to look at the dynamics, it's hard to not start to synthesize these things because you can see them. They're proving themselves through the birth charts and through the way that people act. And so it's personal and professional elevation when we're thinking about Aquarius. Um, it's reasoning and our problem solving skills and the way to abstract think when we're just kind of dealing with our imagination and the way that our mind can compute the way that we could solve a problem or the way to progress. That's an abstract way of problem solving. Aquarius is our self-regulation. Are we able to make ourselves calm? Are we able to regulate our nervous systems to the point where we're reacting from a place of alignment instead of chaos. Aquarius is creativity for the purpose of community, for the purpose of being together. So if I wouldn't have created this class, then I wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to be here in a group with all of you week in, week out. I enjoy it so much. And I have been still searching for classes that are like this for myself, and I can't find them. So I have to make them myself. And that's what Aquarius, Uranus, the 11th house makes us do. It makes us step into that goal, especially that Uranus and Leo. Aquarius is the connection of heaven and earth. When we talk about Aquarius being these tall buildings, it can be all the planes in the air, and hummingbirds. Hummingbirds most definitely, because these things move fast. Their sound moves at the speed of light, and they are a representation of, spreading our wings and going towards like a larger horizon, maybe one that we can only envision in our minds, and we have to kind of just walk the path to get there. And let's see, what else can I say? So yeah, let's move on to the next slide here. So Oprah's in Aquarius. Oprah, she has Sun, Mercury, and Venus in the second house. So right off the bat, we can assume that this woman really loves material possession, really loves making sure that the things that she has are the finer things, the things that are highly sought after, things that are maybe that of, an upper class. And, throughout her shows, she often bestowed that upon her listeners and people in her audience. She would just gift them all kinds of cars and, books. And she just has been a huge resource for people on the TV for years. She had a very early intelligence. She skipped kindergarten after writing a note to her teacher stating that she knew big words. They went ahead and moved her up. So with this Aquarius signature, the Sun Mercury, we can see that she had a very fast-moving mind, and she probably moved at a different rhythm than other people, being so advanced, and the fact that she could write a letter and get herself out of first grade, or kindergarten, that's pretty important. She recounted that her family was so poor in the early years of Mississippi that her grandmother made dresses out of potato sacks for her to wear. So that's one marker of what makes this Sun, Mercury, Venus in the second house want all of those material possessions, to want better for herself after being dressed in a potato sack. Um, so, most people know about her all-girls school in South Africa, but she funded a college education for hundreds of young men through the scholarship program at Morehouse. So, and it's, one of the top nation's historically black colleges. So she's just a very giving person. She can't stop um, offering that which she thinks is missing in the world, right? So she creates a girls' school. She creates a talk show. Um, Now, this talk show that she created, people didn't actually want her to be on TV. They didn't think that she was pretty enough. And they didn't think that she was disconnected from her audience enough to be relevant. Boy, were they wrong. Boy, were they wrong, wrong, wrong. She got on TV and she interviewed people from all walks of life and really educated other people on the mentality and processes on how other people live. So she's got this moon and moon in Sagittarius, and that's in the 11th house. And so, there's this personal connection of, watching people explain where the hurt comes from, where they've been pushed out of. And for her to feel a sense of like personal connection, like, yeah, me too. And there's this exposing factor with Mars and Saturn, where they lay. She is a person that kind of exposes and brings out all of this, what other people would consider just like ugliness sometimes. I remember one of her key episodes was of the young woman who, well, she's now passed away, um, but she had AIDS, right? She was a young girl, and she just passed away probably about a year ago. So she lived a pretty long and full life as a woman with AIDS. And it was so sad to watch this little girl on this show talk about something that she got from her mother through birth, and there was nothing she could do about it, and she was just going to be positive about her life. And I remember Oprah just sobbing on the couch, just completely enamored with her courage and her strength, because essentially, I feel that she sees a part of herself in these stories. And with a moon in Sagittarius in the 11th house, when someone is expressing something that is experiential, that is touching at the heartstrings, that shows that you've charted a whole new path for yourself based on these limiting circumstances, it really lights her up. Um, Very public figure with Neptune in the 10th house. Um, and let's see here. Uranus, third here. Oh, we're so in Uranus, Uranus in the 7th house. Um, so, when it came to Oprah and needing to see a representation of what it means to have an upgraded life, like she's moved on to the next step, I think that it would probably revolve around home, connection to her home and her family. So, she is probably a person who really prides herself on her home, really makes sure that that thing is well to do, because that's probably where she likes to spend most of her time. Um, she has these very deep one-on-one connections with people. At times she would have several people on her Oprah couch. And now, as a woman who just kind of interviews people as random, it's very more one-on-one. She's now talking about the personal lives and personal stories a little deeper. Um, you know, Talking to movie stars, talking to people who are in the industry, and getting more candid about the emotional parts of their lives. Um, and, in order for her to feel a sense of belonging, I think that she would probably feel that, with her own family. Probably not. That's not where she felt comfortable in her life. That actually is what charted her on this path of being this powerhouse, is not having a connection to family. And maybe her grandmother was a big point, but mom and dad weren't there. And so she has to create her own family here. She has to look for people who are going to meet her halfway, who are going to kind of have the same goals in mind, which is to provide resource for yourself so that you can just give it away, give it away to other people. So Oprah, Aquarius. So Uranus is that's our planet of higher sight. It is the network and the web. It's all the forms of technology we use, whether it's the iPhone or earbuds, but also represents cameras. Um, Aquarius and Uranus, those are the archetypes of having far vision, far sight, having laser focus. So when we think about that, we can think of a camera lens and being able to be able to take a great shot, be able to see or to preempt the way someone's going to move and then know the exact time to shoot. I know a lot of Aquarius signatures who are photographers, very good with the eye. Uranus is the connection and care for the human condition. It is tapping into celestial. We talked about it's our social cognition, what we're drawn to, or the web we're caught in collectively. It's the function or the upgrading or step up. And Uranus is the technologically advanced language and communication of where we're at. So this was another unexpected thing that happened. The Challenger spacecraft explosion that happened in '86. So the disaster was triggered by a failure of an O-ring seal in one of the rocket boosters. So this little tiny part, this little circular part, when it would get too cold, it would fail, and then leaking would happen underneath that seal. And so when this rocket took off this day, after being forewarned, after being told that they should not take off, NASA went ahead and went through with the thing. And this Challenger spacecraft disassembled itself mid-air within 73 seconds. They hadn't even made it out of the atmosphere yet. And stories say that these people were probably conscious before they came back down to Earth at almost over 200 miles per hour. So very unexpected, but also horrifying. You've got these 7 people who have trained to be up in the air. They're ready for exploration. They're looking for other planets, other signs of life, other celestial whereabouts, because Aquarius represents that. You've got astronauts, you've got people who want to explore the world, and astronomers. That belongs to Uranus and Aquarius in the 11th house. So we see they took off on this day. And we see that, Saturn was in the 8th house. So, the way things are supposed to work, the way things are supposed to go when it comes to exploration, Sagittarius, and travel, they weren't there. Something was missing. Something was awry. And with this moon in Virgo, we can see that, details and technical problems and things working out perfectly were a worry. Everybody was worried about how this thing would actually go. I wonder how many people actually felt positive about this exploration. Maybe these 7 people, but I'm sure everybody outside of that knew that there was a possibility that there could, be an issue. So I don't know if any of you remember that. I was just 1 year old when it happened, but that doesn't happen very often. Now it does with Elon Musk, but previous to that, um, explosions and things like that didn't happen because they practiced and they were able to foresee things. And so, the fact that NASA just went ahead and did it, based off of, engineers telling them that they shouldn't, um, that'll tell you something about groups and corporations and go ahead, Fetty. Yeah.
I was just about to say, it was a very big deal, and especially for Xers, because they made all of the kids watch it in school. So we were all in class.
And then looking around and being like, it's not a joke, right? And still, no one explained anything. So as a group, we collectively experience this trauma, and we have all these unintended, things that happen because of it. Not feeling safe, not feeling like you can trust, the people in charge. It's kind of scary. I'm sorry, you guys. That's kind of we go through it, but ugh. So, the 11th house, the house of friendship and collective ideas. So, lastly, we're coming together in this house to make a difference. Um, it's what we desire and the way we want to give back to humanity, the way we want to give back to our communities, the way we want to show up in our communities. The 11th house is the house of astrology, astronomy, and technology. Along with this sign and the way that excuse me, where we release our babies into the world. Um, it's how we like to modernize or create a more progressive life, and where we can be misled by others if we don't investigate their intentions. So intentions is a huge thing with Aquarius because with that conversation, there's always unintended consequences of our choices, of the groups we make, of the things we participate in. And when we don't have attention to that, then we see things like cults. We see things like, you know, groups that are continuing to be marginalized, based off of their race or religion or social status. Those are all 11th house things. Um, yeah. Okay. So that's it for today's class.